Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. In this edition of Vibe Gardening Inform Edition, we're going to go into the third episode on Hydroponics 101 series. And it's going to be a follow-up of episode 2, where we're going to deep dive into one of the four pillars of hydroponics, which is going to be nutrition. The only one that I really feel like it's a full 101 episode to dive into. With that said, let's go. So with nutrition, we're going to start talking about really two different types of nutrition in this whole entire episode. Talk about organic and synthetic, and then we're going to talk about something that's kind of on the perimeter, but not quite, which is the calcium magnesium or CalMag, as that does have some nutritional implications in how the system works. It's not just for buffering water. And we're going to tell a little bit of story of my own experience with these type of nutritions, because as you can see, this hydroponic is completely different than the typical NPK from my plant nutrition one-on-one. We'll talk about how NPK affects soil-based planting as we're going completely soilless with just water. So here we go. So with section, we're going to start talking about CalMag or calcium magnesium. And this is a combo that's really kind of want to talk about with my episode 2 with the four pillars. It's the stuff that you want to start out with your pure reverse osmosis or distilled water systems, which is going to give you a base stable system that's going to have some buffering on the nutrition and also the pH to kind of keep things from going crazy. And the reason for that is that the CalMag that you will see most that you're going to be finding in store is kind of like what I'm actually buying here, this General Hydroponics CalMag. And it really is a interesting beast in that it starts out with a 10 to 3, or basically close to a 3-to-1 ratio of calcium to magnesium, and it actually comes with an NPK of 100, which means that it actually comes at 1% nitrogen, technically. But here's the thing you have to remember about these chemicals, that even though it says it is 100 NPK, the reality is that it's that 1% nitrogen actually comes from the calcium nitrate that is being formed. And the reason is that the nitrogen bonds with the calcium to make it a stable substance. And that's why it's basically there to stabilize the pH and to make it so that it doesn't drift or swing as much. It also goes there to essentially form basically it's a carrier for the calcium and the magnesium to be able to make it to the root. It gives it mobility. So even though it's technically nutrition in the form of nitrogen, it is not actually really for feeding the plants. It's for being a carrier. And the interesting thing about calcium and magnesium is that they're actually antagonistic in that if you have too much one with the other, they will fight each other, and both on the biological level and also on the chemical level. On the biological level, the calcium is more for building structure, like a cell wall and the root building and that kind of stuff, whereas magnesium is more for chlorophyll. But biologically speaking, it's going to start competing with one another as they take the same channel to get to the plant. So if you have too much calcium over magnesium, you will start having a chemical problem, which is also why for manufacturing, it's actually easier to do that 3-to-1 ratio of calcium to magnesium, because as it increases on one with the other, it's going to start precipitating in that it's going to form a chemical compound in the solution that is not dissolvable in water. With not dissolvable in water, it is actually no longer available to the plants to uptake. Both on the biological level and also the chemical level, it is not only the right thing for the plants, but it's also cheaper and easier for the manufacturing to use that ratio to keep the chemical from becoming insoluble, which becomes unavailable to the plants. Okay, so now that we've done talk about calcium magnesium as a kind of the outlier that we still need to address, now it's time for us to go into the actual nutrition class that we're going to talk about. So the nutrition class we have here, we have organic heavy nutrition that are, but mostly actually they're more of a marketing type of a thing for organic fertilizer to really reach into a basically buzzword category that I think is kind of happening here. So really the with the way that organic heavy nutrition works is that it really is not complementary to how hydroponics work, in that in the difference between soil and water-based growing here is that when you have organic nutrition, it requires um, microbe to help break down the nutrition in the decomposition process to make it biologically available to the plant. So when you have a organic heavy nutrition, this nutrition is not bioavailable to the plant in its raw form. It has to go through a decomposition process, which is going to require microbe to do the job, to make it become the nutrition that the plant can use to do its job. And whereas hydroponic, you really don't have that soil for you to have that microbial system going. So what ends up happening is that if you're going to have a organic heavy nutrition, it's going to have to use your system or your water as its microbe or microbial ecosystem. So when that happens, it's going to start having all kinds of effects like dirty water, weird smell, going to end up giving you pH swing, and eventually the biggest problem you're going to have is that that microbe at the end of the day is going to be competing for oxygen that is on its own being in all water is already a bit of a scarcity for your plant. So it's going to be taking away that very precious oxygen that your plant will be needing to grow, and essentially end up killing your plants if you don't control the way it grows, the microbe. So essentially what you're doing here is you're taking a essentially non-soil system and controlling microbe meant for soil in that system yourself. And it's going to end up having a lot of, essentially you're going to have to flush and reset your system very constantly to be able to basically keep up with what the microbe is doing in your system, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of organic. Because organic is really depending on the biological process of the microbe breaking down organic substance to make it biologically available for your plants. So when you're flushing it away, you're essentially flushing away what you're paying for, which is the organic substance in the nutrition. So in a lot of sense, this is not very good for your hydroponic system. But this is actually the class of nutrition that's actually almost perfect for houseplants. Because what is terrible for hydroponics, but yet is designed to work with proper nutrition, is perfect for soil. So what it fails in hydroponic is what excels in potted plants in soil. And it's generally weaker than a lot of your outdoor fertilizer like Miracle-Gro and Schultz and such. But what it actually gives you is this ability to give you a gentle, slow feed that is a very nice balanced mix of organic and synthetic fertilizer to give you the nutrition your plants need now. And also, as it slowly decomposes, it's going to give it that rich microbial growth it needs as a plant matures and later on give you a better soil for your plant. So if you still have them, don't throw it away because I have the HydroGreen as I link below. That it actually killed quite a few batches of my green leafy plants, but it is absolutely fantastic for my indoor gardening plants, like my garden in containers experiment. So stay tuned to see how I use them in my other experiments. But for organic, I would say stay away from them for a hydroponic system because it's really a whole different type of nutrition, and you shouldn't fall for the marketing buzz. So as we covered already with organic, I've laid out a lot of the advantages of having a synthetic nutrition. So let's go over kind of the details of how this synthetic nutrition differs from organic and why it's better. So one of the main things for sure is, like I said, this is already bioavailable to your plants to start with. You're not depending on microbe or any biological reaction to happen, because all the chemical reaction has taken place already for this nutrition. So the moment you put it into the water, it is ready to go for your plants right there on the spot where you need it. And the beauty of that is because it's already had all the chemical reactions happen, it is not going to invite much of any microbe activity going on. So your solution stays crystal clear and very stable. And that's actually the hallmark beauty of having a synthetic nutrition, is that you have a stable pH, stable EC or ppm of how much nutrition is in your solution ready for a plant. And that is what makes it so advantageous for hydroponic growers. Now, the disadvantage of that, like I said before, is that because already the chemical reaction has happened, you have no buffer between you and what is hitting your plant. Because before you had all the microbes doing the buffering for you. Whatever you put in the soil in the organic form is going to have to get decomposed by those microbes. We're talking about bacteria here. It's going to break it down. And basically, if you do anything bad to the soil, the microbe is going to get hurt first. And then eventually, when they kind of go out of whack enough, it's going to end up affecting your plant. But in this case, with just water and no soil, you become the microbe. Yes, you. So you're going to have to make sure that everything goes in correct, because every little mistake you make, that plant feels it the moment you do it. And that's what makes hydroponic hard, even though all the other easy stuff that comes with it. But with hydroponic, the whole entire idea here is for you to be in control of the system when it comes down to everything. So I would highly encourage you to invest in using synthetic, because that control is right there on the get-go without you having to worry about all the other stuff happening with the microbe that frankly is not designed for your water or for soil. So with that said, now we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of synthetic fertilizer you can buy. There's really two main types. You have your one part nutrition, and then you have your two part. So the one part nutrition basically is a pre-mixed batch of nutrition that can be sold by basically a lot of the nutrition sellers out there. And the beauty of that is that you don't have to mix it. You just take it and you basically, well, you kind of have to still shake it a little bit to make sure it's, well mixed in the bottle. And then you just pour it in there and you're done. But the problem with that is that a lot of times that solution is going to be hard to mix. Some of them will be thick and viscous, and sometimes it would take quite a while for you to shake and be heavy. And you also don't have the control of what kind of nutrition is in there. So once your plant needs another type of nutrition than what's labeled, you have to go to another product. So that's the one part synthetic nutrition. Now with the next type is going to be the multi-part, as implied with the first part of this discussion here. So the multi-part nutrition are something kind of like the General Hydroponics Flora series, which will give you 3 bottles. And if you mix it in a certain way, it's going to give you the different kind of nutritional balance you need, like 3-1-2, or actually pretty much any kind of NPK ratio you dream of, you can make with those 3 bottles. It's quite fantastic. And when you have something like that, you basically can dial in whatever your plant needs at whatever stage of the plant you're in. But the trade-off is that you're going to have to do everything. You're going to have to mix that batch every single time. You're going to have 2, 3, or more bottles of solution on hand all the time to make what you need. And because the ratio and proportion of what you need of the solution is going to be different, you're going to have different stock of those, different inventory of those things. You might have to buy more of one, buy less of another, and it's going to be something you're going to have to figure out. It's going to take a little while. But honestly, for most hydroponic growers, something like the multi-part is going to be the ideal situation for you, because you want that control, that fine-tuned control of what your plant is going to be taking at all times. And so with those multi-part nutrition, like I said, there's going to be something reputable, like the General Hydroponics Flora series, where it's very predictable and everything. But then there's going to be this white label, two-part nutrition that you'll find everywhere. They look almost identical. They pretty much come from essentially the same factory, usually in China, and they'll essentially be going to different sellers or sometimes not even companies that want to make money with these things, and they'll be slapping on a brand on there and go to Amazon, Temu, or any of those other online retailers. And those things are super cheap because they come in granular format. Like I have right there linked in the image of one that I used when I started out, and it actually worked pretty well. Like yeah, you don't 100% know what is in there because the quality control is generally not that great. But it is, like I said, the cheap nature of this thing is fantastic. It's all granular, which means you're not paying for liquid. You're paying just for the nutrition in weight. And even compared that weight to something like the Flora series, it's going to still be cheaper. That is how cheap this thing is. And I found it to actually work pretty well, even from two different sellers. Now I think it's the same thing because I looked at the ingredient list. It looks almost identical, and actually it is identical. I compared it pretty well, and they worked for all my herbs that I was growing. So that's something as a beginner, if you think you can get away with it, and if you want to throw the dice and try your luck, it's a very cheap option. And if you don't mind having some heartache, having some things die here and there, if you didn't get the right control, I mean, I would say that is something that you, as introductory, you can definitely do because I did it, and I had pretty good result with it. But this year, I'm getting more advanced. I'm going to use the Flora series. So I hope that gives you kind of a good idea of the synthetic nutrition out there. And that's my recommendation for what you can use for your setup. So I mentioned earlier, I've actually tried a lot of things myself in the past year. So I've been doing hydroponics for about a whole year now. And the thing that I did was I started out with those white label two-part synthetic nutritions. And they, like I said, they did really well. There's some limitation to it, but the beauty of it, like I said, is that it was crystal clear solution. In that first, there was a little bit of microbe growth I saw in it, but as the system grew and as the plants matured in the system, the competition of the root with the microbe in the water was just too much for the microbe, and they eventually died. And as I'll go into the system build later on, it also has to do with the light that's hitting the system. So it could not always be the nutrition you put in. And at one point, I built my first DIY hydroponic system, and I decided that it was basically my flagship system, and I was going to use the best. And I found this HydroGreen, or a partly organic fertilizer that says it is hydroponic ready. And so I got it thinking I got the best thing here. And then, like I said, I never changed the solution in my tank. I basically have a long running system, and I got my 150-watt UFO shop light over it, basically giving it almost daylight, very strong light. And one thing that happened was that this is basically the perfect incubator with organic nutrition in the system combined with high light, high intensity light. And what that did was it promoted a lot of algae growth. And one of the big problems with this algae growth, and also the bacteria in there, that's creating those basically those enzyme processes that's breaking down the organic substance, is that it started requiring oxygen to do its work. And so at first, before the decomposition really kicked in, everything seems very healthy. But once the plant started hitting that early vegetation stage and into the next stage, what ended up happening was the oxygen use from those microbes started becoming too much for the plant to compete with. And then they will slowly start to die. And actually, depending on the plant, like for my kale, what ended up happening was they would get to the early vegetation stage. Once they got past the baby leaves, it would just crash and die. And I thought it was my growth sponge. But what I think really happened was it was really just the nutrition was not the right type. It was bringing all these microbes. Not only are they competing with oxygen in the system, they're also coating the roots with the slime and gunk. That's blocking even more fresh water from hitting it, preventing uh, both oxygen and nutrition, fresh ones, from hitting the root. So that eventually created a lot of death in my system. But the funny thing was the synthetic stuff, which was super cheap, and I thought it would be giving the worst performance, that has consistently provided some of the best performance in all my three systems. So this is why this year I'm going to take the approach of going all full out synthetic and invest in the Flora series from General Hydroponic and get the control I need with the predictability of a reputable manufacturer and getting myself a basically a path to success, especially adding that CalMag in the beginning to stabilize the pH and the buffering in the solution. So that's what I'm going to do this year, and I think it's going to be a much better situation for me. So in this episode of Hydroponics 101 with episode 3, I hope this gives you a very good broad overview of how hydroponic nutrition works and how it's different from soil. And like I said, this time I did not go into what is NPK because the plant nutrition 101 should build a foundation for you to understand this different kind of nutrition that you need. But in this series, I grounded you on what's the difference between soil and water and what makes synthetic fertilizer actually what you should be sticking with a hydroponic system. And I give you my own story, kind of showcasing what I've experienced myself. And I hope that's going to help you in paving your way to success in your hydroponics system. And with that said, let's garden, let's vibe. Let's go.